Today I am going to make sub rolls, hoagie rolls, grinder rolls. I'm making them mostly because I can't seem to find any that I like at the supermarket. They just don't have that nice pulley texture and crust that I like, and they always seem to be too dried out. So I forced myself to learn how to make these, so I'm going to show you. Bread has 4 basic ingredients: flour, water, yeast, and salt. Then you can make all kinds of variations. So these sub rolls start out with 500 grams of flour. And I weigh everything. I have a nice little electronic scale here. And I weigh it because if you use cup measurements, some flours are denser than others, you get more or less. You can't beat measuring it for accuracy. So I've got my empty bowl here. I put it on my scale, and then I zero the scale out so the digital readout says 0. And I throw in my 500 grams of flour. You can use all-purpose flour. I buy a bread/pizza flour at one of the big wholesale stores in 25-pound bags. It's relatively inexpensive that way. 501, there you go, 500 flour. And then it calls for water. Put my water glass on here, push the button until it zeroes out, and I'll put in 335 grams of warm water. Oops, that's too much. Let's take some out here. $366. $343, $337, $335. Very good. It also calls, this particular recipe calls for oil. You could use olive oil, Crisco, or shortening, or vegetable oil. I happen to have pre-measured out the 15 grams right there of, I'm going to use shortening today, because I want these to be no flavor of olive oil. And the water should be about 94, 95 degrees. So I'm going to turn over here and put it in the microwave. I put it in the microwave on defrost for 1 pound for 1 minute, because that's what my microwave will do, and it should come pretty close at that time. So I also need salt. So I'll put this back on here, and I'll zero it out again, and I will put in the salt that I need. Here's the salt. Let me check the microwave. That's still going good. So I need 10 grams of salt. So I just sprinkle this in until the scale says I got 10 grams in there. 10 grams of salt. I also need some sugar. Well, let me check the microwave again. I'm using my digital Thermopen thermometer here, and it's very accurate. My water was not warm enough, so I put it back in for another defrost cycle. So the next thing I needed was sugar. And it calls for 15 grams of sugar. So my scale reads 10, so I'll go to 25, because 10 and 15 is 25. It's 24, 25, so I got my sugar. Flour, water, salt, the extra sugar, because it makes the bread a little more finer. Here's my water with a little bit of shortening in it. I put my scale in there. It says 85. I really wanted about 95. And the temperature is very important because yeast, which is this item here, is it's a living organism. And you got to treat it just right. I realize, because I like a cooler house, I keep my house around 68 degrees. And you know, that's not warm enough for bread to grow well. So it took me a while to figure out that I got to have a warmer house. So what I've done instead is I use my oven as a proofing oven so it'll rise. So right now I'm going to turn my oven on. I set it to preheat at 350, and I'm going to do that for probably 6 or 7 seconds. I just heard the relay click, so the oven turned on. It's electric. It's preheating, and now I'm going to shut it off. And at the same time, I turned on the oven light. So now that ought to keep this oven about 75 to 80 degrees. I really like 75 for the whole proofing time. A lot of times I'll open the door, let heat out if it got too warm. And here's my water. Let me check the temperature again. Let's see if you can see the scale with me. That's 98, 101, 102. Well, as long as you're not over 110, you won't kill the yeast. 106. 104, 103, so it's cooling off a little bit. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to throw it in here, and believe it or not, that pan is, this mixing bowl is about room temperature, 68, so that'll cool that water off. And how much yeast did I need? Let me check. Right, yeah. I need 20 grams of active dry yeast. And this is what I do. I just keep it in a bowl in the fridge. So let me turn the scale back on again. It times out, shuts off by itself. I'll put that on there. I'll set it back to 0. I'll put in my 20 grams of yeast. 11, 17, 19, 20. Actually, I hit 21, but that's not going to bother me. That's fine. Now you put this on, no, I'm using setting number 2, which is just above low. Put my dough hook on here. And let it go for 10 minutes. So I got this handy dandy little timer. And I'm going to set it for 10 minutes. Start it. Just let that run for 10 minutes. So in about a minute and a half or 2, I'm going to scrape the bowl down so that all the flour gets mixed in until the ball starts going around. So I'll shut the camera off for now, and I'll come back after 9 or 10 more minutes when that is fully mixed. quite been 10 minutes yet, but at this point I like to scrape the sides down to make sure that any dry flour that has not been incorporated into the ball here is incorporated in. All right, so that's fine. It's all going to work. Back on. Now, what I also want to show you is over here at the oven. I'm going to show you how I make sure my oven is the right temperature. So I'll turn the oven on, I'll let it run for 5 seconds, I shut it off. It was at 67 degrees. So I'm going to touch the edge of the metal here with my thermometer. And let's see what the oven is now. You probably can see inside, but oh yeah, so the oven's 80 degrees. And that's perfect. I just opened the door. I'll open the door again to put it in. It'll be 78 by the time I get this bread in there, so I think that's a nice touch. That way it'll rise properly. And 20 grams of yeast is a lot of yeast, so it's going to rise fast. So this whole recipe takes 2 hours from start to finish. Once I get started, it'll be 2 hours when I pull them out and we're done. So there are three separate rising times during this recipe. And the first one will be for 10 minutes, which I will show you as soon as this is done. So you can see by my timer, I've got just over 2 minutes left on the first mix. So I'm going to flour my countertop here so I can make this ball. All through the scale. Don't do this at home, but I like to free this up from the side so that ball gets rolling around in there. The sticking it while the dough hook is going around, if you catch this, you can break a finger. But I'm just used to doing this now. Show you what it looks like inside the bowl, because you'll know you got it right if it's looking like this. I don't know if you can see. You see how clean the sides are coming, how it's not sticking to the bottom anymore? That'll tell you that it's almost done. If it's still sticking to the bottom, it's either got too much liquid in it or it's not mixed enough. That bowl should come out pretty clean, and cleanup should be really easy in the sink. I use a basic cookie sheet to put the dough in the oven. So I'll flour that. I'll make my dough ball, put it on there, and throw it in the oven for the first rise. Alright, so you can see that my 10 minutes is up. We'll just shut that off for now. That's close enough. Right off of that dough hook, nice and easy cleanup. When I first started making bread, cleanup was a real nightmare because I didn't quite get it. But You do something long enough, you figure it out. It's funny how the yeast is a growing organism, and you got to treat it right. That's a pretty clean pan. Now clean up the tea. So it's all mixed. So you just knead it a little bit. There you go. That's plenty. Just get a little flour on top of it. Make a nice neat ball out of it. It feels great. It's nice and warm because that warm water is going to rise really well. And I got a nice ball, and I've tucked it all in. The bottom looks like that, but that's what happens is you keep tensioning the surface of the dough so you get a nice tense surface. Okay, and then you plop it on there. And I like to get a little, I don't know if you could see it at that angle, but I like to put a little flour on the top of it, like this. And then when I put this little bit of plastic wrap on there, it won't stick to it when I take it off, because the flour will allow it to pop right off. So you cover it. And then I'm putting it over here in the oven that I showed you. I'm going to double check the oven temperature. So the oven is up to 80. A little warm for me, so I shut the light off, cracked the door for a second, and let some of that heat out. And so this particular rise, the first rise, let me turn this on. So this first rise is also 10 minutes like the mix. So we got our timer set, and I'm going to leave this flour here because I need it after this 10-minute rise to work the dough again. So I will clean the kitchen up while we're waiting. Okay, so the timer is counting down. And the one thing I did want to mention, the water that I used filtered water because my city water has chlorine in it. And the chlorine will kill some of the yeast, I believe. So I've always used a good filtered water. Actually, zero water is what I've been using. So here it is. It's been in there 10 minutes. So 10 minutes of mixing, 10 minutes of rising for the first rise. Take your paper off gently, or your plastic. And this feels so nice and warm. Oh, I love that feel. So you want to sort of just break it down a little bit, get it on here. Sprinkle the top, a little bit of flour. Sort of make it into a shape like this. So what you want to do is you want to cut this into 4 equal parts. So you sort of just eyeball it right down the middle with your scraper. There's 2. That's about 4 equal parts. You want all your sub rolls to be perfect, just weigh them and they'll come out perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to make a nice little ball out of this. Nice little ball, that feels so nice. And what I'll do is you just sort of give it one of these, round it up so it has a nice round shape. And you still got some flour over here. Just round that one up, put it on over there, Take your next one. I take that cut end, I put a little flour on it. Fold it together. That's what I don't beat all the air out of it, but this method actually knocks it down and gets the gas out of it, so it gets to start over. So you just do this a couple of times. That one's done. Stretch it out, you know, so you get like a skin on top. You stretch the top. If it starts to stick to the counter, just throw some more flour in there so it doesn't stick. I'm going to separate these a little bit more so they don't grow together. Okay, there you go. And they have flour on top already because I've been playing with the flour. So this plastic can go back on. Actually, I'm going to use 2 pieces. This one can cover these 2. And I've got another piece I'll put on the other 2. There we go. So that wasn't too hard. Put them back in the oven. I haven't played with the oven. I turned the light back on to keep it warm because that light bulb puts off heat. And this particular rise is 10 to 15 minutes. So because my house is a little warm today, I'm going to set it for 12 and just let it rise for 12. And then I'll check it and see if they've doubled. There we go. And the idea of this rise is you read some recipes and it'll tell you let it rise until doubled, till almost doubled. So you need to get a feel for what bread you're cooking. These particular sub rolls, I like to have more of their rise at the end, so they get to be a little bit larger sub roll. So I go almost doubled on both of the rises. That way there I still got more rise left in the yeast for the last rise, where you make the sub rolls, you put them down and you let them rise just before they go in the oven. So we got 11 more minutes, so I'll catch up to you after that. All right, time's up on that one. Let me get these rolls out of the oven. Here we go, and I would say they've just about doubled. And so that was a good amount of time. Take this plastic off. Actually, I'm going to go a little slower than usual, so I will leave the plastic on. I hate to have them dry out. So, while time was off, I cut myself a piece of parchment paper, the right size to fit on that cookie sheet. And that's where these are going to end up after this step. And I like putting a little very fine cornmeal on my parchment, because I like having that on the bottom of my roll. It gives it a nice crunch. So I'll just spread that out on the parchment. There we go, very nice. I like cornmeal. Okay, so we'll take the first one. I'll flour my hands pretty good. I want to flatten this out. I want to get all the air out of it. You can use a rolling pin if you'd like. I push a lot of the flour out. I don't have too much flour in this particular one. But yeah, you could do it by hand. Just push it to the edge. it's getting sticky because I didn't use too much flour, but I want it to be sticky. So now I take it and I just roll it up. Now I'm going to make a sub roll. I'm going to make a 13-inch or so sub roll out of this, and then cut it in half because I like 6 or 7-inch sub rolls when I eat them. Get all that dough to come together. Get your basic 12-inch ruler. That's about 12 inches. I'll go with that. Cut it right in the middle. And just sort of pinch these cut ends down so they form. And then roll this. Get that end to be nice. And I go to another, maybe I go to about 7 inches at this point. 7 or 8 inches. Okay, so there it is. I'll put these over here. Bring this up here so you can see it. So I'll take this first one and just put it right there. And I'll do this one the same thing with this one. Notice I haven't added a lot of flour here because it's just, I don't want to overdo it. And that's good. So that one's done. I'll put that right next to it. So now it's skinnier in the middle, so I'll just work on this side, get this to roll out. I want them all to be the same thicknesses if I can. That looks about right. Let's see what we got. A little more. There's about 12. I'll go 12 inches. Keep them all the same. Just sort of pinch these ends to get back together. Roll this out to be about 7 or 8 inches. And you will find a seam. So you put the seam side down. Sometimes they come out with no seam and that's a nice touch, but at any rate, you push that in if it gets too skinny. A nice roll there. There's the seam. There we go. So roll it up. This one's pretty sticky. Oh, there we go. Now we got, we're going to have 8, 7 or 8 inch sub rolls, 7-inch sub rolls. If you want a longer sub roll, a 12-inch, don't cut it in half. It'll bake just fine. You get a nice big long 12-inch sub roll. See, the 12-inch, you can make that one sub roll and pop it on there and bake it. It'll come out just fine. But I usually don't eat a sub that big anymore. There we go, keep rolling. That's actually a pretty long one, isn't it? Shorten that up a little bit. There we go. All right, so they lined up pretty good. You don't need any of this flour on here. Now that it's on the parchment. There you go, you slide it right on there. And this particular time you want to spray them with water to keep them moist. You don't want them to dry out. And once again, I used filtered water only because my water here has chlorine or something chemical in it. I can smell it when I turn it on. My other house I had a nice well water, delicious. And you never had to worry about that. But I don't want to piss off the yeast, so to speak. But anyway, water, cover, back in. Back in for 15 minutes or until the doubled this time. So let's go up to 15 minutes. And this would be a good opportunity to clean up. We're all through with the flour. You take your scraper and you scrape your counter into a pile, that's all. Very simple. Put a cornmeal over there, get that. Bring the wastebasket over here and scrape it right into it and clean the dishes, and I'll be back with you in a few minutes. Here we go. I gave an extra 2 minutes because the oven cooled off. And if you noticed, I've given you approximate times for rising because everything depends on the humidity in your house, the temperature of your oven, the temperature you start your yeast out at. So you got to just almost watch, everything should almost double. And those there have certainly doubled since I put them in. So I'll put these over here on the side while we preheat the oven. Now, commercial ovens or bakers, they have steam injectors, so they inject steam in their oven at certain times to get the bread to get a nice crust and a quick rise. Take a pan like this with a large surface, set it on the bottom tray while you're reheating. Fill it with about a half or 3/4 inch of water. So during the cooking process, this oven will be moist and have some steam in it, and you'll get a better crust. That's what you're supposed to do, and that's a safe way to do it. I've come up with another method that I do, and I'll show you, and it can be dangerous, and it's not for everybody. But if so I'm just going to show you what I do. what I do is I take a stainless steel frying pan that's oven rated, I set it on the bottom tray, and I preheat that, and then I'll dump hot water on that, create a large steam bath as I put the bread in, and I'll show you that. So for now we're going to preheat the oven to 450. And that should take about 6 or 7 minutes. And while that's going on, I'm going to boil a little pot of water that I'm going to dump on top of my frying pan in there to create all that steam when I throw the bread in. And that should come to boil about when that's ready. And I'm just going to let these sit over here, and I'll come back to you when everything's up to speed. The oven is preheated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently take off this plastic so I don't deflate these little babies. I'm going to hit them with a little bit of spray again, just so that it adds more moisture to the oven and gives a nice crust. And I'm going to put them in the oven. And I'm going to pull this bottom tray out with this preheated 450 degree pan. I'm going to set it just right so when I close the door it'll fold back and in. And when I pour this water in here, it's going to give a lot of steam really at once, and I want extreme steam. There we go. Now those rolls are getting steam. Don't do this if you're not comfortable. It works for me, but I like that extra steam. So now we're going to cook these for 15 minutes. So I'll set the timer on this oven for 15 minutes. Actually, I'll go 14, so I come back a minute early and check it. And I put the rolls on a cookie sheet. I have 2 cookie sheets. One is insulated and one is more or less uninsulated. I use the uninsulated cookie sheet because it allows the bottoms of the rolls to get cooked more fully and have that nice tan color that I like. So now we're going to wait 15 or 13 more minutes, and we'll take a look at them then and see how they look. All right, so the time is up. Let's see what we've got going on. The back one's a little more brown than the front one, so my oven's hotter in the back, so I'm going to turn it around a little bit and let those back ones darken up. And one way to test if they're done is you hear how hollow that is? Those are done. So let's let the back ones brown up a little bit and we'll pull them out. And if you notice now, I've got it at 375, so I put them in at 450. I waited 5 minutes, then turned them down. That allows the steam to get up there and give it a good, nice, chewy crust. And these particular rolls I overproofed, which means I let them rise a little too much before I put them back in. And on the next video, I will show you how to test for proofness with your finger on the dough. So they didn't rise as much as they should have, but they're still going to be delicious. So let's give them another minute here to finish cooking. Okay, let's see what we got now. Yeah, there they go. They browned up in the back. So I'm going to take them off of there. Shut the oven off. The safe thing to do now is to leave that pan in there and let it cool off. But I just want to, I've been in the kitchen a little too long. I got to get out of here and do some other things. I'm just going to take this hot water and dump it out. And now, I see I've got this pan that's 450 degrees, or 375. So what I do is I put it somewhere like this. I put a hot pad over the handle so that I'll know it's hot in case I go to move it in a few minutes. Or if anyone else were to come in the kitchen, they'll see the hot pad on it and get a good hint. I've told everybody in the house, if you get a hot pad on something, it's there for a reason. Now these are done, so I'm going to slide the parchment. I'll just do the parchment. I can slide the parchment right off. That thing there is done, nice and clean, ready to be put away when it cools. And we can check these rolls for the bottoms. Bottoms are beautiful, that's fine. So what I'll get is a cooling rack. Ooh, those are hot. Ooh, they're hot. Whoa. Nice and soft. All right, well, there it is. I'm going to cool them and eat them. And then they're fresh bread, so they'll only last 2 days, maybe 3 days, and start to get stale. No preservatives. So what I do is, for dinner tonight, I'll take 1 or 2 of them and cut them in thirds and warm them up and serve them as dinner rolls because the inside is so soft. Wait till you try them. But the other ones I'll put in a gallon freezer bag once they're fully cooled and take them out of the freezer as I need them. So I mean that batch could last me almost a week, but they're so easy to make. I usually do a batch a week. Yeah, and there's the bottoms. See how soft they are and they spring back. Oh, beautiful. Okay, thank you.